think that's something that we currently see with linguistic validation, right? Just to give you the transfer from my research to my current
It's a nice pivot.
Yes, because we have a lot of translator and interpreters from life science, if we consider the specialized one, right? So when you get into the translation industry, you decide what type of translator do you want to be, either in the legal, economic, or life science. But also within the life science, you've got particular niche that you can opt, and linguistic validation is one of those, right? Where you have to have a higher degree of specialization rather than just being a medical translator. You have to understand the context of clinical outcome assessment, to understand the importance of nuances of the words and cultural diversity, right?
Welcome to the Culture, Communication and Care Spotlight with Mark Gibson and Nur Ferrante, a space within the Patient Voice and Linguistic Validation Café podcast where health communication, cultural sensitivity and diversity are given voice cross-culturally through experiences of patients and professionals in the field.
This episode is sponsored by GRC, putting the patient at the heart of research globally.
Our guest for today's episode is Anca Bodzer. She's a Romanian researcher in translation and interpretation based in Spain. Discover her multicultural background and experience as PMP and seasoned project and program manager. Well, hello and welcome to this new kind of episode that we have in our Patient Voice and Linguistic Validation Café. This is the Culture, Communication and Care Spotlight on Anca Bodzer. And we are co-hosting because Mark Gibson and I are today and from now on co-hosting this podcast. So welcome both of you. Mark, thank you for taking the risk.
Well, I've never done it before, so you might fire me.
Yeah, well, we'll see after this one.
Yeah, I would need an appraisal.
Yeah, yeah. And Anca, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and to be in the spotlight and to share with us about you and your personal and professional and academic trajectory. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really happy and honored to be here with you and your audience as well.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you to all people who are watching. And well, Mark, you look like like with a background. Where are you? Where are you today?
I'm in my hometown, which is in the northeast of England, and I'm in a hotel room. So I've positioned the camera away from the messy bed.
Yeah, that's good. Although it would have been fun, to see all the.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But I'm just here to spend some time with my parents. So I'm kind of on vacation, which is why I didn't bring any nice jacket or anything, which I like wearing in podcasts.
Yeah. You're very elegant always when we see you, right? And with always a different one and stylish. So yeah. Okay. And are you enjoying the area? Is it a nice place?
Well, it's both a nice place and sometimes has problems. It's a city that it's quite economically depressed, but I have hope that it will improve in the future.
Mm-hmm.
It has a nice optimistic feeling at the moment.
Okay. And what's the name of your?
Sunderland. So I would say if we're talking about Spain, the equivalent will be Bilbao.
Okay.
So shipbuilding.
Like more an industrial touch.
Yeah,
and
in Romania it would be Arad, somewhere like Arad. It's working
Okay.
class and
Right.
proud of it.
Yeah. Nice. So you're co-hosting for the first time from your hometown. So that's
Yes.
really, really
Yeah.
nice. Really nice.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. And tell us, Anca, where are you today?
Well, I'm based in Madrid. This is my home for the
Okay.
last 15
Well,
years.
that's my birth town.
You see the connection between all of us?
Yes.
Yeah. But I'm originally from Romania,
Mhm.
from a small town in Romania, northern western part of Romania, very close to the border with Hungary, but also with Ukraine. Yeah, that's the hometown, and I would say that the place where we born really shapes our lives. At least in my case, it shaped my life regarding language. Because, as I mentioned, the town is located very close to the Hungarian border, and my parents and some of my family members speak Hungarian. But when I was a kid, I understood Hungarian, but then I lost it. I didn't put any effort into it, and there were some moments in the family which I remember with such a nice feeling, especially around Christmas, when my parents were hiding the presents from myself and my sister. And now my sister and I, we didn't speak Hungarian, so my parents would speak Hungarian just to decide where to hide the presents from us.
Oh, okay.
So it was the type of, okay, our parents are talking Hungarian, there's something we shouldn't be aware of. And yeah, that's how the curiosity for language.
You have to take over, co-host.
Yeah, because I was I know that Hungarian is a significant minority language in Romania.
Hungarian, you mean? Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Yes.
Did I say Hungarian or?
I think I've heard Bulgarian, that's why I...
No, Hungarian. It's
Okay,
my
yes,
accent.
yes, definitely, you're right. Hungarian is a minority language in Romania, yeah.
Well, in significant numbers. And so what other languages are spoken there as kind of indigenous minorities?
Yeah, I would say that Hungarian is the first one, but definitely the landscape is changing now. If we are to consider Romania, I don't know, 20 years ago, we would consider Romanian as people going into other countries, like immigrants, right? Coming from Romania to other countries. But nowadays we see that there's a shift, and Romania is receiving people from Asia and even from Africa. There was a high percentage, I would say, of students going to Romania even years ago to study medicine, especially. And we have a very good reputation regarding medicine, and there was always an interest of people from different countries to come to Romania to study medicines. But as I was mentioning, the landscape is changing now, and we have more and more greater variety of people coming to live or to work in Romania, either temporarily, or some of them, they, create their lives there, their families, and they stay. But it's very nice to see this change also, and the increasing diversity.
And also since the Ukraine war, a lot of the media has been focused on Ukrainians going to Poland, kind of as refugees. Has that been the case in Romania?
Yes, definitely. Romania also received a high number of Ukrainians, but as I don't live in the country, I'm not able to provide you much more accurate information. But definitely, we are a neighbor of Ukrainian, and we have received Ukrainian people to keep them safe. And it's true that they are integrated in the society. And yeah, I think it's very nice when you see that in challenging times, the neighboring countries, just like it happens with people, you are there to support and to provide the necessary guidance or food, shelter, whatever they need in order to keep on going with their lives, right? In such a context.
I like how we have started, because in truth, this interview or these series of interviews are also focused on our cultures, our countries, and give voice, let's say, to our diversity, but also in terms of health and care and all these aspects of culture, communication, and care that really, Mark, you came up with this idea, and starting with sharing our own cultures and hometowns. It's really the focus of this, and for instance, in my case, I was born in Madrid, but I'm living in Avila, in a little town that I just moved to. So I left because there was a package for me, and because I just moved, so I'm receiving many things, and there's no way, the person would keep ringing on the door. And it's for me, it's not the place where I was born, but it's the place that I chose by heart, or I don't know, my heart chose to be here, and I really love it. So I also wanted to tap into that, because you were born in Romania, Anca, but you decided to move to Spain. So what happened? Why did you decide to live in Spain? What was the adventure that took you
Yeah, and it's
here?
again languages, because none of my family members live in Spain. They haven't lived in Spain. So it's again a story of languages, because while I was doing my bachelor's degree, I studied English, Spanish, philology. And I started to work as a translator and interpreter for a company. And they were opening their markets in Spain. So I was traveling with them quite often. And the first town that I visited was Madrid. And it was like, wow, I would like to live here. So I projected myself to come and study the master's degree here. And yeah, that's what I did. I moved to Spain after I finished my bachelor's degree. I was admitted to study a master's degree in intercultural communication, public service translation and interpreting. Basically, I came here for 1 year. That was the idea. But while I was finishing my master's degree, I got a chance to study, to continue with a PhD. I got a scholarship from the University of Alcalá, where I was studying. So yeah, I was trapped, if I might say so, into another 4 years here. And then slowly I built my life here, and yeah, I stayed. So I'm still here. But basically, it was languages and studies. I really like the culture, the Spanish culture. I like the weather, definitely, the food and the people. I mean, just as you mentioned, I think it's important to just feel where you feel comfortable, and take the necessary steps to achieve that feeling, and go to those places, or engage or collaborate in projects, or collaborate with people, companies where you really feel comfortable with, and you align on the values and the lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Spain welcomed me as well, and I just have tremendous love for Spain, Spanish people, Spanish culture, art, food, everything, drink, especially drink. And so I know what you mean. Would just in terms I think Spanish culture, and by extension Latin American cultures are very easy to get into, to become part of, and you genuinely do become part of it. Whereas in cultures, I don't know, somewhere like Switzerland or the UK, it's a bit more difficult to insert yourself. Were there any issues, any real clashes that you found, any culture clashes between Romanian culture and Spanish culture?
I think the first one that I felt was the hours when people have lunch and dinner. Yeah, because in Romania we normally have lunch around 12, 1 o'clock. But here in Spain, you can have lunch from 1 to 4 o'clock, right? So I was starting to feel hungry at 12 o'clock, and people were like, we just finished breakfast. How can you feel hungry, right? But in Romania, we have breakfast much earlier. So the lunch is earlier and then dinner is earlier, definitely. But also,
well, we have the aperitivo, the appetizer that, you know, that's 12:31. No.
But it's also because the daylight in Spain, you have a much longer day than in Romania, for example. And that's true not only if we consider winter time, right? Also in summer, you can see that also regarding the weather, right? People spend much more time outside and enjoy sitting on a terrace and having the conversation, having lunch or dinner outside, right? That's also changing in Romania. More and more people spend more time outside. But yeah, I think that the first clash was that one, the hours when to have lunch and dinner.
And
And what else? What
Go
other? Because you said the first clash. I'm interested in other clashes.
Another clash is, I would say, it was the time frame when the shops are opened, and especially here I can mention the banks, right? In Romania, you have the banks, they are opened from morning until evening, right? But here, for me, it was very strange to say that I can only go to the bank in the morning up to maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But I was studying, I was, doing my PhD. I was working as a full-time employee at the University of Alcalá, doing my research and so on and so forth. So it's like, okay, but how can I go to the bank? So to me, it felt a bit weird that you have to balance somehow the administrative part with the working schedules. That was being another clash, I would say.
And yet another one? Or feeling welcome or not? Did you have difficulties integrating? People were,
No, not at all.
receiving you?
Not at all. I
Well,
must admit that people are really friendly, really open, and it's quite easy to make friends. And even at the university, I remember that one of the best things that I loved about the master's degree is that we were people from all over the world. So I was in the Romanian group, to say so, but we had people speaking Arabic, French, Russian, Polish, Americans from UK. We were like people from everywhere, and just interacting with them and having our Spanish colleagues, right? They were like the guide for us at the beginning, because most of us were coming from other countries to Spain, and it was really easy to integrate. I think that the Spanish people are really friendly and open to even curious people, right? To know more about the rest of the people that come and join, and how is in your country, how is in your culture. And I like that openness and curiosity about them.
Yeah, also the university environment is more flexible and open, because young people and everybody, just so many of them even having moved from other areas of the country, and also feeling even though they are from Spain, but also feeling that they need to adapt and integrate. So that, I guess, invites more openness and welcome diversity and discovering each other. That's curious what you're saying, because in my case, when Madrid is a very open city, and very cosmopolitan, but when I came to live in Avila, well, I'm not in the city of Avila now, but in the city, and they used to tell me that they were very, people in the Castilla region are more, it's more difficult for them to open at first, make friends, so on with them. But the thing is that they go very slowly with you, but once they accept you, it's forever. I mean, but you are like family, really.
Yeah.
So that's in a way kind of what happened to me. It was very difficult at first, even me being from Madrid. But then I just got adopted by a family, and we are together still, and celebrate Christmas, birthdays, and everything. And it's just really forever. So it's very, very special, very curious, and to me was a great say, well, one of the things that maybe make me want to stay, it's like what we say, right, Mark? The places that love us, the places that welcome us, where we really feel at home, and those are the places you want to stay, because they bring like this home sense, but it's just, so I guess I can understand that maybe Madrid, that's what did to you. It's a place that loves you, and that's very nice to see, and you can get to have the richness of your both cultures, right? The one.
Yeah, although I go quite often in Romania. I mean, my parents live there, my sister lives there. So I normally travel 2-3 times a year. I do go and visit them and travel with them. So yeah, I'm really in contact with my country, to say so.
And I would like to ask you directly in relation to this, this diversity and richness, right? What was your, because you mentioned that you did your PhD, no, right? You did your master's degree and then your PhD. So what was your PhD about? What did you, what was your passion, in researching, and why you did it?
Yeah, basically my PhD is a continuation of the master thesis, because I was really passionate about language and the inclusion of gender in language and how it evolves. So my PhD is about a combination of raising the awareness of using professional translators and interpreters, but applied to the context of gender violence. So to give you a brief idea, I studied how the interpretation and translation was done in the Spanish context, focused more on the criminal part, the courts, right? In cases where the gender violence victims couldn't speak or understand Spanish. So basically it's raising the awareness that those non-Spanish speaking gender violence victims have the right to a translator and interpreter, but not any person who speaks Spanish or their native language, but rather a professional one. So apart from advocating for the professional status of our profession, I think the context of gender in language, and especially the impact of using or collaborating with an interpreter, male or female, in such a specific context, was also part of my investigation, to see how it impacts the fact that the interpreter is male when an abused, maybe sexually abused, gender violence victim has to tell her story again in front of a psychologist or in front of the criminal courts or at the police station. So it went from seeing the current status at that moment, because I did my PhD 10 years ago, and there was a high frustration of having merely bilingual persons used as translator and interpreters. So basically, this practice was not doing any favor to the profession. And here we're talking specifically about what we call public service translator and interpreters, or in UK and then United States, the term used is community translator and interpreters. But basically, these are those translator and interpreters that support patients in any public service of the country, right? So the idea is that, first of all, it was important to analyze the current status and see why the country, and not only Spain, there were other countries having the same situation, using only bilingual persons. And when I say bilingual persons, I want to say unprepared persons, right? Because we can have bilingual persons with an amazing level of English and Spanish, for example, or Romanian, or whatever the language is. But it's true that we need to advocate for the professionalization of our translators and interpreters, especially because training is very important, to know the code of ethics, to know how to behave in specific contexts. And definitely gender violence is a very specific context where code of ethics and knowing how to act and how to act in a professional manner, but especially confidentiality is something that is a non-negotiable, right? Because in a gender violence case, confidentiality of the victim can be broken by a person simply by not being aware of what the impact of not keeping that confidentiality mean. And here I want to say that the landscape at that moment was showing that kids of the victims were being used as interpreters, right? Sometimes this impacted not only the language barrier, but it also created an additional trauma for the kids, right? Because they have to hear the entire story of their parents. And here, when I say gender violence victims, I want to think about them as patients, because sometimes definitely that victim had to go to the hospital to be assessed by a clinician, right? And then go to a psychiatry, psychology, or social worker. So even if we consider gender violence victims, but they are patients, and having their kids act as interpreters definitely is something that has a big impact, not only on the victim, on the patient, but also on the kid, right? Some other cases we had when neighbors were being used as interpreters, and here, depending on the culture, definitely you never know whether that neighbor maybe is a good and real friend of the aggressor. So how is that confidentiality, accuracy, impartiality, transparency, all these items of the code of ethics being kept, right? So it's not just a matter of come here and translate from Spanish into Romanian. It's about being aware of what that role mean, right? And as I mentioned, how you act in such a context. And there were cases where gender violence victims went to the police to file a complaint, but because they didn't have a professional translator or interpreter, or because the waiting time was too long, the stress, the burden on them was just so high that in the end they left without really filing the complaint. So it was very important to analyze the landscape at that moment. And during my PhD, I interviewed a lot of professionals, police officers, social workers, psychologists. I did field work by going to the criminal courts almost 8 months on a daily basis. And I was invited to keep workshops at different town halls, for example, just to raise the awareness of gender violence victims that they have the right to use a professional translator interpreter. They should not accept to be accompanied by the neighbor or a friend or whoever was just like a very immediate solution. But that's also because they were not aware of their rights. So yeah, I think that's one of the, it was very a tough topic, to be honest, especially during the field work when I had to go to the courts every day and just witness trials with such a topic. But I think it's such a rewarding outcome just to know that you are raising the awareness about what professional translator and interpreting means, and especially to give the victims the right to know what their rights are, right?
Yeah. What I think what you said, because I've done a lot of reading around this for about 20 years, more, 25 years on exactly this topic. And I got interested in it because I saw people who I knew going back to the 90s, that's how old I am, who were from linguistic communities such as Kurdish and Arabic, Somali, Eritrean, who had absolutely no linguistic training, and they will be going into private hospitals and working for the police as interpreters without any qualifications whatsoever. And I think you're absolutely correct about just a complete disregard for and lack of awareness of ethics in these situations. So you could get situations where, like a community leader is the interpreter, and that community leader knows the victim, knows the family, knows the perpetrator, and everybody around them. So in many respects, those secrets, I guess, are used as currency against the people. Used as something to damage their reputations with, should they wish to do that. And I think in the public sector in the UK there is this idea that uh, just because a person speaks Punjabi, you know, they're never going to be speaking it to a professional level anyway. It's just a home language. That means that they're qualified to do police interviews or hospital interviews, or qualified to do things like patient voice research in Punjabi or in Urdu or whatever. So that definitely resonates with me. But what do you think would happen where there is a very short supply professionally, or a very short supply of professionally trained translators and interpreters in a new language that has entered Spain, such as I don't know, let's say Wolof or Mandinka from Guinea. These are communities that are coming into the Canary Islands and into Andalusia through boats. The small boat issue that the UK also has. What happens if there isn't the people?
Yeah, that's a very good point, and that's the reality also, right? It's not a fictive scenario, but I think in those cases the work of specific training from academia, but also from different even individual researchers or already professional translators and interpreters, right? Just engage with those people who want, or we need them to become professional translator and interpreters, and cover with them, train them how to interact with the clinicians, how to interact with police officers, how to behave in a court, for example, the turn speaking. And especially, I think the basic starting point would be have a very accurate introduction of what their role means. It's not about just speaking the two languages, but you are here acting a specific role. And these are the non-negotiables, which are our code of ethics, right? You have to be impartial, you have to keep confidentiality, you have to transfer the message as accurate as possible without omitting, adding, or, distorting the message. Be transparent, and definitely have a professional behavior. And here I think that most of the code ethics also include intercultural communication, right? Because the translator and the interpreter is the only person who has visibility into both cultures, right? So for example, I don't know if we talk, if we consider an Arabic person, right? But the clinician is Spanish, right? Maybe that Arabic person does not want to have a blood transfer because of cultural sensitivity, right? So that's something that a translator and interpreter can identify, discuss in a professional manner, rather than have it as a shock between, oh, but you have to have this blood transfer, but understand the culture of that person and behave in a professional manner impartially between the two parties, and get to an agreement where maybe there's another solution instead of that blood transfer because of cultural differences.
Did you see differences when, let's say, it's the interpreter, the professional one that you were considering was from one of the countries or the other, in the sense of it was the same country as the person as the victim, or it was a Spanish person who spoke perfectly the target language? I mean, do you see, because for example, these issues, these cultural sensitivity issues, like the person that is Arabic as well, you know, is closer to the Arabic culture. And did you see difference when it was a Spanish person speaking Arabic than it was an Arabic who also speaks Spanish interpreting?
I personally didn't research that particular aspect. As I mentioned, the aspect I was focusing more was whether the fact that the interpreter was a male or a female had any impact. This specific
Okay, yes,
gender
because
violence.
it's true that you mentioned that you were
Exactly. So I was
focusing on
focusing
gender.
on the gender rather than But it's
Yeah,
true
because in those cases,
affects-
right, if it's a male, Arabic male interpreter,
exactly that,
not
and
the same
that's
as a
where
Spanish male interpreter, and how he may approach the victim or have, well, because of the Spanish culture, the differences of
exactly. And I think that gender is very well interconnected with the cultural part, as you mentioned, right? Because some of the conclusions from my research is that in particular scenarios, as going to the police officer, maybe it's not that relevant, the gender of the interpreter, the sex of the interpreter, whether it's a male or female, right? But if we talk about emergency shelters where the victims can stay up to, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks or months, definitely in that emergency shelter, you only have gender violence victims and the person that support them there, right? And whenever they request an interpreter, the idea is that that would be a female, that would be a woman coming to break down the linguistic barrier. Obviously, opting between, if you have to think, what shall we do? We don't communicate with these persons with this gender violence victim because we don't have a female interpreter, or we bring on a male interpreter. Definitely we would go for the male, right? Because we need to communicate with that victim. We need to know what's going on with her. Sometimes they have traumatic episodes, depression, so on and so forth. But in that particular case, and with the social workers and psychologists, it was proven that the victims feel much more comfortable with female interpreters, and knowing their cultures, the ones that are aware of their cultures.
So closer in culture.
Exactly.
And closer, like whatever is closer to their identity.
Yes.
Yeah, that was my question, really. So thank you.
But while you were talking, I was mindful of, I think we are losing sight of the importance of interpreters on the international stage. And many people have said that, that situation between President Trump and Zelensky wouldn't have happened if there was an interpreter there. And I was watching the interaction between Giorgia Meloni and President Trump, and Macron and Merz. They've dispensed with the interpreter, and you can see that there's so much scope for misinterpretation. I remember Meloni was trying to explain about the importance of Western cultures as a collective, as a philosophy, and she just wasn't getting her point across at all. But I think, an interpreter would have been a very different outcome in all of those interactions.
Yeah, definitely, and that's why I advocate so much for the status of our profession as translator and interpreters, right? Because sometimes it's so easy to say, "Oh, but I speak English." Everyone speaks English almost nowadays, right? But as you well mentioned, a professional translator and interpreter can really make a difference, even in such a diplomatic context.
Yeah, because they are connectors. They are a kind of mediator. I mean, the sense of bridging cultures. They are not trying to resolve conflicts, not in that sense of mediator, but indirectly they are because they are, let's say, the nexus in that moment. They are the only component in that scenario that brings together really both sides. So,
and especially when we talk about emotions, right? Because even if you think of the episode between Trump and Zelensky, right? It's about emotions. They got very intense.
yes.
And the way we can express our emotions is definitely in our native language. And sometimes you just might use a more aggressive word in English just because that's the word that you know in English, but maybe in your native language, the tone would not be that high. And that would be something that definitely a translator and interpreter would save the tone intensity.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Especially when we talk about emotions. And here I come back to the gender violence context also, because these are traumatic episodes, and expressing your emotions, there are people who really understand. Even in my research, there are many gender violence victims that spoke Spanish, but still they decided to use a translator and interpreter in the end, because those emotion and living again that episode really is such an intense effort that speaking it in your native language it's much easier if we can use the word in such contexts. And definitely even in diplomatic contexts, the translator and interpreter, not only they are able to bridge the communication in a professional manner, but I think it also helps to, when the two people engage, there's a moment of pause, right? Because the interpreter has to render the message. So that's when the brain of the person who gets intense can also has that break, short break of maybe I'm too intense, but otherwise it's just respond and react.
It creates a buffer, like that, the 10 seconds, to wait 10 seconds to respond, or breathe a little. And in truth, yes, it has a very, very calming effect that making way to less conflict. And it's really very important, yes.
And I guess it's also about face saving, because these leaders, they don't want to be seen as not speaking English good enough. I mean, Macron's English is probably a bit worse than my French, but I wouldn't dare enter into that conversation without a native French linguist, enter into that level of interaction without an interpreter. And the same, Zelensky's English just wasn't good enough to it might be a blow to his ego, but I'm sorry, you're representing a whole country. You should have had an interpreter there instead of perhaps looking after your own face or ego.
Yeah, because also Zelensky may be, well, I don't know, this is just my thinking, but he may have been in a situation of trauma, Well, he was. I mean, his country is in the situation that it is. So he's already in a state that his brain is not able to process emotions in different language in the same way. And he was also, a lot of pressure, and with the president of the US and all that, and trying to keep, I don't know, the integrity as much as he could, where when being attacked verbally at the same time, and that's a lot of pressure, and a lot to ask of a human being in a situation like that. So an interpreter probably would have produced a very, very different outcome. And I wonder, I really find this conversation fascinating, because it taps into, it's interwoven with patient voice research, let's say, because we are talking about trauma, we're talking about people who suffer this gender violence as patients, right? So it's right into the point. And also our cross-cultural communication and the importance of what we do. And you mentioned before the podcast, Anca mentioned to us that you had other two parallel projects, right? I don't know if they came up with, well, one question I want to ask you is, what brought you to decide on this PhD research? What brought you to think, hey, I want to do this about gender violence and the role of professional translators and interpreters?
I found it very fascinating, because in Romania at that moment, well, we didn't have other people from other countries coming to Romania. So for me, coming to Spain and having such a great variety of people surrounding me, right, a lot of cultures, and then finding out about all these challenging that all these challenges that the system was facing, right, the public service setting in this particular case. And when we say public service, again, there's many institutions involved, from criminal courts to hospitals to police stations, so on and so forth. So for me, it was just amazing to see the challenges, and I was always amazed by the capacity of those of us that choose to be translators and interpreters. But I was disappointed about the fact that we were not recognized as such. And everyone was like, oh, but I also have a cousin that speaks Spanish, so he can do the translator. So it's just taken for granted. It's like, it's nothing. It doesn't mean anything. But then when you go to talk to a clinician, when you go to the courts and you see that a trial is being canceled because the judge is just so aware of this situation, and she prefers not to send to jail someone just because the interpreter was not good enough, or just leave free someone who might need to go to jail just because the interpreter didn't use the correct nuances of the words. And here it's very well connected with linguistic validation, the nuances of words, right? And that was something that really fascinated me. And the gender violence context was something that at that particular moment was at an initial phase in Spain, the feminist movement. But to all the events I was going to, and the workshops I was attending, and even from European Union, Spain was given as an example, because in Spain we have specific courts that only judge this particular type of trials. So it meant to work from the institution itself to train the lawyers and the judges how to react and how to behave in this particular context. Because as we say, it's not only about knowing two languages in our case, but it's how do you react in a specific context that requires you a bit more level of awareness. So they started to do this at an institutional level, to create specific courts where the gender violence cases were being handled. And I think that's something that we currently see with linguistic validation, right? Just to give you the transfer from my research to my current
it's a nice pivot.
Yes, because we have a lot of translator and interpreters from life science, if we consider the specialized one, right? So when you get into the translation industry, you decide what type of translator do you want to be, either in the legal, economic, or life science. But also within the life science, you've got particular niche that you can opt, and linguistic validation is one of those, right? Where you have to have a higher degree of specialization rather than just being a medical translator. You have to understand the context of clinical outcome assessment, to understand the importance of nuances of the words and cultural diversity, right? And yeah, I think that it's just a matter of, for me, it was curiosity, and see the challenges and see how can I support and bring some solutions. In my case, with the research, it was about raising the awareness, as I mentioned, of the status of our profession, the importance of getting professional training. And that was done through the workshops, through the dissemination of my research. And definitely after I moved into the private sector, it's again about getting specialized, get to know the context where you want to work, right? It's not only just, okay, I'm a professional translator, but you have to go on with your training. It doesn't stop just, I'm a medical translator and I stop there. It's a continuous learning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You have mentioned, the part where you moved into, let's say, the business or the
Yes.
corporate world, and we are going to dive into that, because we're very interested in knowing your professional trajectory after the academia. But before we move there, I wanted to ask you, like, you mentioned you did this research 10 years ago, and what changes have you seen? You know, have you observed this awareness that you wanted to raise, having an impact and changing things in this scenario, you know, gender violence and professional translators?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I am currently a bit disconnected from what public service translation and interpreting means, because when I decided to switch from academia into the private sector, I focused on life sciences, but I focused more on project management and getting involved in specific projects, to say so. And I was more engaged in what is client relationship, customer relationship, operations, and working with teams, empowering teams. I like this, the idea of working with people, engaging with them, helping them see their potential. And I think that's something that comes from the academia era, because while I was teaching there, apart from doing my research, I had to teach. So it was very rewarding to see the level of my students the first semester, and then at the end of semester, you see how they evolve. Some of them are challenging, but then if you just understand and you know how to work with them, you see their evolution. And the same is valid in the private context. When you engage with your teams, there are people that maybe don't understand correctly their role, so maybe they are just disconnected because they don't understand. I just translate a paper, I take it from here to there. But if you understand what a clinical outcome assessment means, if you understand the impact of that translation that you do on a daily basis, is not just moving a file from here to there, then that's a different aspect, a different level of engaging with your team. And the way they respond is definitely seen in how they interact with the customers, in how they interact with the rest of the colleagues, translator and interpreters, in how they interact regarding their relationship with the managers or their team leads, and how they see the projection regarding their professional development, right? It's just a matter of understanding why there's a disconnection and getting to see the potential in every person and make them support them to see that they do have everything that's needed. It's just that a little switch to help them reach that potential. And it's amazing when you work with teams and they start to see their roles and they start to see the team spirit and they support each other rather than work in a siloed manner and I'm better than you and you're, I don't know. It's good to have a competitive spirit, but at the same time, I think that there's a saying that you cannot go anywhere alone, right? We are all part of a community, and also that feeling of community. And here, when we talk about community, if we talk of the private sector, is the team you're part of, right? Your colleagues, your team lead, your managers, but even the customers. And yeah, I think that's something that I really enjoy, working with people, supporting them, understanding their challenges, and then see how we can improve things and collaborate in a much better way, but at the same time enjoying our collaboration.
Wonderful. So I see that we're going to be asking you more details about that, but I'm curious. You mentioned, your parallel projects. You mentioned to us diversity and intercultural mediators. So are these projects that you will develop or you started developing, or because you wanted to share with us that? So we would like
exactly.
to know more.
While I was doing my PhD on gender violence, I was also involved in other research projects because basically that was my job, to say so, to research and to teach at the university, right? But apart from my funded project, I was involved. I was part of a research group, and I was involved in other projects. And the other two projects, the other two main projects I was part of were we were researching the factors that were affecting the quality of life regarding foreign people living in Spain, right? And another one was the interlinguistic and intercultural mediation. And it was specific to healthcare setting, where we created a group of intercultural mediators. We had an agreement with a hospital here in Madrid, and they agreed to support us to create a group of intercultural mediators that would go to the hospital on a daily basis for a particular time frame. And not only they would provide linguistic services, but they would also train, clinicians and nurses how to interact with this person, because it's not only about bringing that interpreter in, but it's how the rest of the team, how the interaction is taking place. And there are many clinicians, nurses, or healthcare personnel. They are not aware of how to interact with this person, right? How you talk. You cannot speak for 5 minutes. You have to know that it's very important to talk in short phrases, to take breaks, to allow the interpreter to interpret. So how this interaction is happening, there has to be some sort of training, but not only the training, it's the practice, right? So what we did with this particular project was to get there the intercultural mediators and have them interacting on a daily basis. So you don't only read a paper, say that I need to speak with short sentences and take a break, but rather to live that experience, so that by the moment you really face the situation where you need to work or collaborate with a translator and interpreter, you're already familiar, and it's much easier and faster to be able to provide the support as a clinician, because you're already trained. You know what it means to have an additional person there and how to interact with them. And that's very important. And it was a very successful project. And the same happened. We had another project. It was for prison, for personnel from prisons, right? How they interact with translator and interpreters. And I think it's important in every public service context, right? Because you, as I mentioned, you not only bring a person there, but how you interact, how you give the space to that person to act as an interpreter.
This makes me think of Mark, of information design. Like, I wanted to ask her if they created, material for specifically for the project that you did all that in the hospitals or in the hospital in Madrid. Like, did you create material for reading material for this clinicians and nurses and so on to use, apart from that, the direct experience, so that they may know how to treat patients in those contexts? I don't know if my question is clear.
No. So was there anything produced in terms of guidance of how to communicate and how to incorporate?
Yeah, definitely. There was a guidebook created, but also it was the outcome of this project was basically to get this team of intercultural mediators to work there in the hospital for a particular time frame, so that the personnel would get used to what a collaboration is with such professionals. Because and the idea was, again, raising the awareness, right? Because the idea was to foster such an idea that the translator and interpreter is someone who's here to support, not to bother. Because that's one of the other things. We don't want another person. We don't want to wait for the translator or for the interpreter, because it takes us 1 hour. Yes, but that 1 hour really means a lot, because the service you're going to provide through this professional is going to have a much higher impact on the patient, right? So it's not just someone who comes in to disrupt and to bother you. On the contrary, it's someone who's really coming to support, so that the level of your service is the same.
So, well, we are reaching the end of the time we have, and can you tell us that journey that was, well, you have been introducing it, but when you decided to move into the private sector and to expand all these, let's say, gifts that you have as project manager, and this leadership that is naturally new?
Yeah, so after I finished my PhD, I still worked at the University of Alcalá for 1 more year, and then I decided to take the leap into the private sector. And yeah, I think I was already familiar with the private sector, as I was mentioning, because before having the PhD, I worked in a private company. So yeah, it's something that it was familiar. I was not familiar with the corporate environment, and here I talk about big companies, multinational companies. But here again, we have this cultural aspect where you have colleagues, managers, clients from all over the world, right? So it's a very nice experience. And yeah, I just decided to get into the healthcare sector, but in the private. And here was the pivot towards project management. And I was fortunate enough to be able to work in a CRO. And again, fortunate enough, the moment, at the time, I don't know, everything aligned. But I was able to contribute to the implementation of the European Falsified Medicines Directive, a particular part of it, which are the legitimacy checks. And I was simply amazed by the manager I had. I was working from Madrid, but I had also a manager in Brussels. And I was really amazed by his leadership style. And he was so supportive. And for me, it was those 2 years working on the legitimacy checks of the European directive was like an MBA. So I never did an MBA, but those 2 years were definitely my MBA, because not only the leadership style of my manager, but also the complexity of the project, because it meant onboarding all European pharma companies and also non-European, the ones that have agreements with Europe, right? Companies from United States, India, Japan, so on and so forth, because this is a directive, something compulsory, is not something optional. And it was a really complex project, and dealing with clients, which were the pharma company representatives, was not easy, but I could see the shift, and being guided by a leader who leads with a people first mindset was definitely something that stayed with me, and yeah, definitely had an impact on my career. And from there I said, this is the type of leader I would like to be one day for other people as well.
You're gonna have to tell me offline who this person is, because I'm really
Yes.
curious. I think I mean, we've had other conversations, and I want to say publicly that one of the things that amazes me about you is just that well, what we would call in England as an all-rounder. So, like with me, I'm an all-rounder. I'm good at this, bad at that, good at that, bad at that. So it's very inconsistent. But I mean, you have the project management skills, you have the people skills, you have the leadership skills. I mean, the list goes on. You're helping me with redefining our business structure. So that's high level consultancy as well. So I think that, without embarrassing you, I think that you're the perfect package. Really.
Thank you. I really appreciate. I appreciate. And that's only, I'm the result of so many interactions with other managers and people, customers. And yeah, definitely when you have such role models, uh, the bar is really high. So yeah. And here I can say publicly that the manager I was referring to is Eddie Gillison, and I will always be thankful for his leadership and the way he guided me, right? Because I didn't come with an MBA with a business background, and he was there supportive. And again, I was able to train the team we had there, and it really had an impact on my professional career. And I think that it's these roles models that all of us have, right, in our trajectories, we always find. And in my PhD career, to be honest, I also was fortunate enough to have a judge helping me, because I came from with the Spanish English philology background. So for me, understanding the legal context in such an advanced level was definitely a challenge, because it's not that I could go to the courts and just stay there. I needed someone to guide me to understand, because just by looking at trials, okay, you can get to a part of it, but not to the to the real dynamic. And I was fortunate enough that there was a judge that saw me, and I talked to her. Look, I'm doing a research. I'm really interested in this topic. She was really interested in raising the awareness about having professional translators and interpreters, and she really guided me towards what the dynamic of a trial means. She gave me books to read to understand the criminal courts, to understand the Spanish legal system, and it's just amazing how the best results get out of the biggest challenges. When you face a big challenge, I don't know how, there's an amazing person that shows up and really guides you, but definitely you have to put the effort and be there, be open to and curious to continue.
Yeah, because it was frightening, but you were courageous enough to, even if you feel fear, go with fear.
It was overwhelming, but
but you were humble enough, to open up to learning and really receiving as much as you could from that person, and that has been integrated in you. And now, well, you have become this person with this huge leadership capacity and management, which is really admirable. I second Mark's remark. I really admire you, and it doesn't end there, because you also have a podcast. You are a huge connector of people. We can say that because we have been in her podcast.
That's right.
And maybe to finish, because we have barely 5 minutes. What thoughts do you have for the future, or any ideas of where you want to take your professional life towards?
I see myself in the same environment where I can work with people and teams, right? To make them see their value, their impact, and customers, because in the end we are so connected. Customers reach their, potential with the services that they offer, and I really feel comfortable in the private sector. As I mentioned, I think the 3 main areas that I really enjoy are operational improvements, team leading, and customer excellence. These are the 3 areas that I feel comfortable and I like. They are challenging, definitely, but I also like challenges, so I can say that everything that challenges me, it makes me grow, and definitely the people around as well.
I once in the podcast, I openly said that Anca should become my company's CEO, and she politely, basically said, "No, you're too small."
Yeah. Yeah, she's used to managing huge teams, right? Over more than, I don't know how many you said, but huge teams. And
yeah, I like to see the impact in people, and that's what I said. Transitioning from academia to industry, it's not that different, because in the end it's the same. I like to train people, to prepare trainings for my team so that they understand their role. I used to do a lot of PM training, and I see the change in people when they understand, what's the difference between a scope change and scope creep, how to handle communication with clients, how to handle communication with the frustrated clients. So they just need to be just like all of us, right? You don't know how to write, but you go to school, you get a mentor, and you start to write by yourself. The same is valid in leadership. You just have to gently guide people, because everyone has a lot of potential.
Yeah, but that's something natural in you. That's a gift. And that's a gift. And you remind me that you are that kind of person who lives the world better than they found it. And whatever you are in, you live it better. Whether it's a company or a friend's gathering, it just really impact people and create something beautiful. So I really, really appreciate your friendship.
No, thank you. And I appreciate it as well. And I was just amazed how we got to meet, right? The 3 of us. It was just such a nice coincidence. But again, it's the people around that really shape our life, our daily life, the people with whom we interact. And we've got such nice collaborations, right? I was impressed by each one of your stories. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to interview in my podcast. And that's how I also discover people's stories, because everyone has a story. And I'm really glad that this collaboration didn't stop at just an interview in the podcast, but look, we are just collaborating even more. So I'm really grateful.
Yeah.
And thank you for everything that you're doing and creating the space and being open.
And thank you for being the first one to dare to enter our space with door rings and hotel rooms and
Well, but we don't need to be perfect. It's better to
yes.
just go with the
it's
flow
just who we
rather
are,
than
you know.
this is life.
And what I've learned is that I should turn off emails and Teams messages because I was getting everything during.
And bring a blazer in every trip that you go to.
Yeah.
No.
That's not about it.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank
really,
you.
Anca. It was
For
amazing.
the podcast, what's your podcast called?
Oh, yes. Well, you're planning on some
Yes, I'm going to
updates on the
another
podcast. So
pivot.
tell us before we have to
I
go.
started it as a passion project aside, just because I wanted to get in contact with the colleagues from PhD, but then I extended it to people from industry. So the podcast, it's called Language Surfers, Fresh Waves from Industry and Academia. But I'm pivoting it to something more, to extend it a bit, and it's going to be focused more on leadership. Definitely the linguistic part is going to be part of it, and I'm going to continue to interview people from the language industry, but I want to open it to something bigger and dedicated to leadership, because I think it's so important, especially nowadays when we talk so much about AI and everything seems to be AI, but the people and how this wave of AI is being right is important to see the leadership and the people behind.
And well, I may be just saying something that I shouldn't, but I will risk it. You have some plans on teaching. Could you advance something for us, for people that may be interested, of course?
Yeah, and again, I think that my professional trajectory is just connecting the dots, because I'm planning to start to create a PM course. And I forgot to mention that even though I finished my PhD on gender violence 10 years ago, I'm currently part of the ISOQL working group focused on gender. I'm really happy to be part of that group. And I can see that 10 years ago, my PhD was, or the research, the topic was like on hold, but now it naturally came. So I'm really happy to be part of that group where we talk about the relevance of gender inclusion language in COA, right? In COA design. And I think it's just a natural evolution of everything that I like.
Everything comes together, right? And you can develop
and training
and
has always
brighten all your
been there.
aspects.
Training has always been there. So if before I was doing training for my particular teams in the companies I were working with, I just want to open it to a larger audience and create from my experience, not just a course where this is project management, but incorporate feedback from my experience, from the academia, from the private sector, part of mentoring and mindset, because I think that's one of the important things. I've been investing significantly in myself in growing my mindset and switching specific challenges, and it's part of giving back to the others.
Yeah, because you have this title, that this project management, that I never remember.
Yes, the project management professional certificate.
Yes, that's it, which is very, very difficult to attain. And then you've done it. And well, it's part of, it really fits great in your future course, right, on project management. And we really look forward to it. So,
everything comes up at the right moment.
Yes.
And also, I think just project management, these are skills that erode as well. So it's something that you always need to be keeping on top of in terms of sharpening. So I think your course will be useful for me. Members of my team, we always need to be sharp in terms of project management, and you can't ever be complacent.
And with project management, I feel like it happens a bit just like with translator and interpreters. just because you coordinate your holiday doesn't mean that you're a project manager, right? So again, I see the same pattern of, advocating for the professionalism of specific roles, because you're not a professional translator interpreter just because you speak two languages, and you're not a project manager just because you handle the holidays for your family.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And are you going to be focusing it on linguistic validation or translation specific, like what or tapping into different areas within project management for the life sciences?
Well, I'm still at the beginning of thinking of how to shape it, but yeah, I think that something specifically to linguistic validation would be useful, because I see, just as you are well aware through your course of linguistic validation, there is an increased interest in this particular area. So I think that's something even for the linguistic validation experts, right? Because apart from doing the linguistic part, you still have some sort of project management that you need to handle, right? The coordination with the persons that you interview, with your project managers from the company that shares the company with your clients. So in the end, there is always a part of project management. So I think it would be nice to have something also for this particular niche.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mark, you can continue being a co-host. I approve.
Did I pass?
You passed.
I'll make sure I won't have the distractions though the next time.
Yeah. And thank you, Anca. It was really a
Thank you both of
pleasure.
you. It was really nice to talking to you again, and I really appreciate the space, and as always, a nice conversation. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
I'll see you on Thursday on a different thing.
Yes. So this was Culture and Communication Care Spotlight on Anca in our Patient Voice and Linguistic Validation Café. And thank you so much for all those listening or watching. And we'll see you in our next episode.
Perfect. Thank you. And I hope this is helpful for your audience as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Culture, Communication and Care Spotlight with Mark Gibson and Nur Ferrante. Stay connected by visiting our website artofdiversity.org and by subscribing to the Patient Voice and Linguistic Validation Café YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share about us with your community on social media. Thank you. We appreciate your support.